The phone rang at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, pulling me from a restless half-sleep. I'd grown accustomed to my wife's business trips over the years, the empty bed, the quiet house, the solo dinners. This conference was supposed to be routine, 3 days in Chicago, networking with industry professionals, the usual presentations and seminars. She'd be home Friday evening, tired but satisfied, with stories about boring keynote speakers and overpriced hotel coffee. But this wasn't her calling to say goodnight. "Mr. Thompson." The voice was professional, measured, with an undertone I couldn't quite place. "This is David Richardson, head of security at the Grand Meridian Hotel in Chicago. I apologize for calling at this late hour, but we have a situation that requires your immediate attention." My heart rate kicked up instantly. Images flooded my mind: accidents, medical emergencies, robberies. Is my wife all right? Has something happened to her? Your wife is physically unharmed, sir. However, I'm calling regarding a matter of security protocol and guest verification. He paused, and in that silence, I felt something shift beneath my feet, like the first tremor before an earthquake. "Sir, are you aware that your wife has been registered at this hotel under the name Jennifer Morrison?" I sat up straighter, suddenly fully awake. "That's not her name. Her name is—" "I'm aware of her actual identity, Mr. Thompson. That's precisely why I'm calling." His voice remained calm, almost clinical. "Hotel policy requires us to verify the identity of guests when certain irregularities arise. Your wife checked in 3 days ago using a credit card in your name, but registered under an alias. This alone wouldn't necessarily trigger our protocols. But what?" My voice came out harder than I intended. "Sir, our security system tracks keycard access throughout the building. Over the past 3 nights, the individual registered as Jennifer Morrison has accessed room 847 approximately 8 to 12 times per day. Room 847 is registered to a Mr. James Castellano, who checked in the same day as your wife. The pattern of access, combined with the use of an alias and the duration of visits, some lasting several hours, has raised significant concerns." The words hung in the air like smoke. I tried to process what he was telling me, but my brain seemed to be moving through molasses. "You're saying my wife has been going to another man's room repeatedly?" "I'm saying that the person using your credit card and claiming to be Jennifer Morrison has been granted access to another guest's suite multiple times. Given the circumstances and the use of a false identity, we felt obligated to contact you. We take guest security very seriously, and when financial fraud may be involved." "This isn't fraud," I interrupted, my voice hollow. "That's my wife. She's just using a different name." The silence that followed was somehow worse than his words had been. It was a silence filled with pity, with uncomfortable acknowledgement of a truth I was only beginning to grasp. "Mr. Thompson, I understand this is difficult. I want you to know that we have timestamp data, keycard records, and security footage if you need documentation. I'm not making assumptions about the nature of the situation, but I felt you had a right to know how your credit card is being used and what's occurring under your name at our establishment." I found myself standing, pacing across the bedroom floor, phone pressed against my ear. The room suddenly felt too small, too empty, too full of evidence of a life I'd thought I understood. Her book on the nightstand. Her robe hanging in the bathroom. The framed photo of us from our anniversary last year, both of us smiling like we meant it. Had we meant it? Had she? How long? I asked, though I wasn't sure what I was asking. How long had this been going on? How long had she been someone named Jennifer Morrison? How long had I been living in a marriage that was apparently a carefully constructed illusion? "This is the 3rd night of the current hotel stay," Richardson replied carefully. "As for anything beyond that, I couldn't say. But Mr. Thompson, if you need the records, the documentation, the evidence, it's all here. And it's all time-stamped, verified, and backed up on our secure servers." I thanked him, my voice operating on autopilot while my mind raced ahead, already making plans, already knowing what I had to do. I didn't sleep after hanging up with David Richardson. Instead, I sat at my desk in the home office, the blue glow of the computer screen casting shadows across walls that suddenly felt like they belonged to a stranger's house. Every email, every text message, every calendar entry from the past year began to look different through this new lens of suspicion. The signs had been there. I'd just been too trusting, too comfortable, too naive to see them. Her business trips had increased over the past 8 months, from quarterly to monthly to twice a month. She'd become protective of her phone, angling it away when I walked by, taking calls in other rooms. There were new clothes in her closet, things I'd never seen her wear around me. She'd joined a gym and changed her hairstyle. I'd celebrated these things as signs of her growing confidence, her professional success, her taking care of herself. What a fool I'd been. By 3 a.m., I'd made my decision. By 6 a.m., I was sitting in my attorney's office. Gerald Pearson had handled the closing on our house 3 years ago. He was meticulous, discreet, and opened early for clients who needed him. The look on his face when I explained the situation told me he'd heard versions of this story before. The hotel security footage and keycard records will be crucial, he said, making notes on his legal pad. The use of an alias is particularly damaging. It demonstrates premeditation and deception. Given that there are no children involved and you've maintained separate accounts for your personal funds, we can move quickly on an annulment. An annulment. I'd been thinking divorce, but Gerald shook his head. You've been married less than 3 years. She used deception regarding the fundamental nature of the relationship. With the right documentation and her behavior pattern, we can argue fraud in the inducement, that you wouldn't have entered the marriage had you known about the ongoing affair. An annulment means the marriage is void, like it never legally existed. Cleaner, faster, and given your financial situation, more advantageous. He worked quickly. By noon, I had a packet of documents that would dissolve my marriage as if it had been nothing more than a legal error. All I needed was her signature, witnessed and notarized. Gerald had included instructions for hotel staff, should I need their assistance. One more thing, Gerald said as I stood to leave. Take someone with you. A witness. Someone who can verify that you remained calm, that you didn't threaten her, that everything was handled civilly. Protect yourself, not just legally but personally. I called my brother, Thomas, who asked no questions when I told him I needed him to drive to Chicago with me immediately. He'd never particularly liked my wife, something about her always seemed off to him, though he'd been too polite to say it directly. Now, sitting in my passenger seat as we drove through the afternoon traffic toward Illinois, he simply offered his presence and his silence. We arrived at the Grand Meridian at 6:30 p.m. The hotel was exactly as I'd imagined from the website, all marble and brass, with a lobby that spoke of expensive corporate accounts and visiting executives. David Richardson met us near the front desk, a tall man in his 50s with grey hair and the posture of someone who'd spent time in military service. "Mr. Thompson," he said, shaking my hand firmly. "I've prepared everything you requested. The keycard records, the security footage timestamps, and a notarized statement from our staff. I've also spoken with the manager. We're prepared to assist however necessary." He led us to a conference room off the main lobby, where he'd set up a laptop. "I should warn you, the footage is clear. If you'd prefer not to view it." "Show me." What followed was worse than I'd imagined, yet somehow exactly what I'd expected. The footage showed her entering the elevator alone, smiling at her phone. Then, on the 8th floor, she walked directly to room 847 and used a keycard to enter. Hours later, she emerged, her hair different, her clothes adjusted, her expression satisfied. This pattern repeated across 3 days, sometimes twice in an afternoon, once late at night. The man, James Castellano, appeared in some footage as well. Younger than me by perhaps 5 years, fit, with an easy confidence. Once, they were shown together in the hallway, his hand on the small of her back, her leaning into him in a way that spoke of comfort and familiarity. This wasn't a new affair. This was established, routine, practiced. "How long has he been a guest here?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. Richardson consulted his records. "Mr. Castellano has stayed at this hotel once a month for the past 7 months. Always the same week your wife has been here for conferences. Different events, different bookings, but the timing is consistent." 7 months. nearly as long as her increased travel schedule. Room 847 was at the end of a quiet hallway on the 8th floor. Thomas stood near the elevators, far enough to give me space but close enough to intervene if needed. David Richardson remained in the lobby with hotel management, ready to provide whatever assistance the situation required. I'd asked them to have someone from the front desk available, along with a notary public. Everything needed to be documented, official, and legally airtight. I knocked at 8 p.m., knowing from the keycard records that she was inside. Had been inside for 40 minutes. The door opened, and James Castellano stood there in an untucked dress shirt and slacks, drink in hand, casual and comfortable in his space. His expression shifted from annoyed at the interruption to confused when he saw me, a stranger in a business suit holding a leather portfolio. "Can I help you?" His tone was dismissive, already moving to close the door. "I'm here to see my wife," I said clearly, loudly enough that she would hear me from inside the room. His face went pale. "I think you have the wrong room." "Jennifer Morrison," I said, using the fake name, though her real name is Emma Thompson. "And we've been married for 2 years and 8 months. So no, I don't have the wrong room." I heard something drop inside, glass shattering against tile. Then she appeared behind him, wrapped in the hotel robe, her face cycling through shock, fear, and something that might have been calculation. She was trying to figure out how much I knew, what story might still work, what explanation could salvage this. "How did you?" she started, but I raised my hand. "The hotel's head of security called me last night. Apparently, using a fake name and spending hours in another guest's suite raises red flags when you're charging it all to your husband's credit card." I kept my voice level, almost conversational. "They have security footage, keycard records, timestamps. 7 months' worth of reservations that coincide with your conference schedule." She stepped forward, her hand reaching out. "Please, let me explain. It's not what you think." "Don't." The word came out harder than I intended. "Don't insult me further by lying. I've seen the footage. I have the records. I know exactly what this is." James Castellano had recovered his composure somewhat, though he still looked like he wanted to disappear into the carpet. "Look, man, I didn't know she was married. She told me she was divorced, that she traveled for work, That's a lie too," I interrupted. "She's been wearing her wedding ring in every piece of footage except when she's entering your room. She's very careful about sliding it off in the elevator." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. How many others have there been? Or is he special? She wrapped her arms around herself, and for a moment, I thought she might actually tell me the truth. Instead, she went with anger. "You had no right to spy on me, to track me like some kind of stalker. This is harassment. The hotel contacted me because you committed credit card fraud using a false identity," I said calmly. "They were legally obligated to verify the account holder's authorization. Everything after that was just confirmation of what they'd already documented." I opened the portfolio and removed the annulment papers. "I'm not here to argue or listen to explanations. I'm here to end this marriage. These are annulment documents. My attorney will argue fraud in the inducement. You deceived me about the fundamental nature of our relationship. With the evidence, it should be straightforward." Her eyes widened as she took the papers, scanning them quickly. "An annulment? You can't. We've been married almost 3 years. We've been married 2 years and 8 months, and you've been having an affair for at least 7 of those months, possibly longer. The deception and fraud give grounds for annulment. Sign them now, witnessed by hotel staff, or I file for divorce and make every piece of evidence public record. Your choice." "You bastard," she hissed, but I could see the fear behind the anger. She worked in a conservative industry where reputation mattered. A quiet annulment was infinitely preferable to a public divorce filled with hotel security footage and testimony. I stepped back into the hallway and made a brief call. Within minutes, 2 hotel staff members appeared, a manager named Patricia Hewitt and a notary public. They entered the room professionally, taking in the scene with practiced neutrality. Patricia Hewitt was a woman in her early 50s who'd clearly dealt with difficult situations before. She set up a small portable table in the suite sitting area while the notary, a younger man named Kevin, prepared his stamp and logbook. The whole scene had a surreal quality, like watching a business transaction in the middle of a personal catastrophe. My wife, Emma, stood clutching the annulment papers, her knuckles white. She'd thrown on clothes hastily, jeans and the shirt she'd been wearing earlier, buttoned wrong in her rush. Her carefully constructed double life was collapsing in real time, and I could see her mind racing, searching for any escape route. "This is insane," she said, her voice rising. "You can't just show up and demand I sign legal documents. I need my own attorney. I need time to review." "You can have an attorney review them," I replied evenly. "But you'll sign them tonight, here, or this becomes exponentially more complicated and public. Your choice." James Castellano had retreated to the far side of the room, clearly wishing he could vanish entirely. He kept looking between us like he was watching a tennis match, his earlier bravado completely evaporated. "Mr. Castellano," I said, turning to address him directly, "I'd like you to understand something. I don't blame you for this situation. My wife is an adult who made her own choices. She lied to you, just as she lied to me. But I need you to witness what happens next, because it involves you whether you want it to or not." He nodded slowly, seeming to shrink further into himself. I turned back to Emma. "Here's what I know. 7 months ago, your travel schedule changed dramatically. You started attending conferences twice a month instead of quarterly. You opened a separate credit card I knew nothing about. I found the statements in your car this morning while you were here. You've spent over $40,000 in the past 7 months on hotels, dinners, clothes, and other expenses related to these trips." Her face went even paler. She hadn't known I'd found those statements. "I also found text messages you'd archived but not deleted. Hundreds of them. To him, to at least 2 other men, going back 18 months. This isn't a recent affair, Emma. This is a pattern. A lifestyle." I kept my voice level, factual. "The annulment is a gift. It means this marriage is void. It never legally existed in a meaningful way. You won't be a divorcee. You'll simply be someone who made a legal error that was corrected." "You went through my car," she said, her voice shaking with rage. "You violated my privacy. You violated our marriage," I cut her off. "You committed credit card fraud using my accounts. You lied to hotel staff, to your affair partners, and to me. Whatever privacy you think you deserve evaporated the moment you checked into this hotel under a fake name and charged it to my credit card." Patricia Hewitt cleared her throat gently. If I may. I've reviewed these documents at Mr. Thompson's attorney's request. They're standard annulment papers. You're not waiving any financial claims. You'll still be entitled to half of any marital assets accumulated during the marriage. The annulment simply dissolves the marriage as void rather than ending it through divorce. From the hotel's perspective, we need this situation resolved tonight, as there are questions about the validity of your registration and payment method. That got Emma's attention. "What does that mean?" "It means," David Richardson's voice came from the doorway, I hadn't heard him arrive, "that you checked in under a false name using someone else's credit card. That's fraud. The hotel has grounds to contact local authorities if this isn't resolved satisfactorily." Emma looked trapped, cornered. I almost felt sorry for her, but then I remembered the footage of her laughing as she entered Castellano's room, the text messages making fun of my boring life, the casual way she'd compartmentalized her double life. "I need my things from the room," she said finally, her voice small. "My actual room. 612. "I've already collected them," I replied, gesturing to the 2 suitcases Thomas had brought up on a luggage cart. "Everything except your toiletries, which are in this bag. I left your wedding ring on the bathroom counter in your room. Seemed appropriate." She stared at the suitcases like they represented everything she was losing, though really, they were just clothes and laptops. What she was losing was the careful balance she'd maintained, the dual life she'd built, the security of a marriage she'd betrayed while keeping me as a safety net. "If I sign these," she said slowly, "what happens to the evidence? The hotel footage, the records?" "They remain with the hotel and with my attorney," I said. but they won't be filed as part of any public record unless you contest the annulment. Sign willingly, and this stays private. Fight it, and everything becomes part of the court file." She looked at James Castellano, perhaps hoping for support, but he wouldn't meet her eyes. She looked at the hotel staff, at the notary, at me. Slowly, she moved to the table and picked up the pen. Emma signed the documents with shaking hands, her signature barely legible across multiple pages. The notary verified her identity using her driver's license, her real name, not Jennifer Morrison, and stamped each page with official precision. Patricia Hewitt witnessed the signatures, adding her own where required. The whole process took less than 15 minutes, but it felt both eternal and impossibly fast. When the last page was signed, I gathered the documents and placed them carefully in my portfolio. Emma stood there, looking lost, as if she couldn't quite believe what had just happened. The confident woman who'd maintained a double life for months now seemed deflated, uncertain. "I loved you," she said suddenly, her voice breaking. "I know you won't believe that now, but I did. I do." I looked at her for a long moment, considering my response. "No," I said finally. "You loved the security I provided. The house, the stability, the cover story. You loved having someone to come home to who asked no questions and trusted completely. But that's not the same as loving me. That's not fair." "Fair?" I felt anger rise for the first time since entering the room. "You want to talk about fair? I worked extra hours so you could take these trips. I supported your career moves. I celebrated your successes. And the whole time, you were using that freedom to build a completely separate life." I took a breath, forcing calm. "But it doesn't matter now. This is done." David Richardson stepped forward. "I need to inform you that your registration at this hotel has been flagged. We'll need you to check out immediately. Your credit card, the one in your own name, has been charged for your actual room through tonight. Any charges to Mr. Thompson's card have been reversed as of an hour ago." Emma's face flushed. "You can't kick me out. I have rights." "You registered under a false name," Patricia Hewitt said firmly but not unkindly. "That's grounds for immediate termination of your stay. Your belongings are here. We'll have security escort you from the building to ensure there are no further incidents." Security escort. Emma looked horrified. "Like a criminal." "Like a guest who violated hotel policy," Patricia corrected. "It's standard procedure." I picked up my portfolio and nodded to Thomas, who'd appeared in the doorway. "We're done here," I said. I looked at James Castellano one last time. "I'd suggest you learn from this. People who lie to their spouses will lie to you too." He nodded mutely, still looking like he wanted to disappear. As I turned to leave, Emma grabbed my arm. "Wait. Please. Can we talk? Really talk? There has to be a way." I gently removed her hand from my arm. "There's nothing left to say. You made your choices, and now you live with the consequences. I'll have the house locks changed by tomorrow afternoon. Your belongings will be packed and available for pickup this weekend. Coordinate with Gerald Pearson, my attorney." "The house. That's my home." "It's my house," I corrected. "I owned it before we married. You have no legal claim to it, which is clearly stated in the prenuptial agreement you signed. Another document you probably should have read more carefully." I walked out of the room with Thomas beside me. Behind us, I heard Emma start to cry, real sobs, not the manipulative tears I'd seen before. Part of me felt guilty for being so cold, but the larger part knew that any mercy now would be weakness she'd exploit. In the hallway, David Richardson walked with us toward the elevators. "I'm sorry you had to go through this, Mr. Thompson. For what it's worth, you handled it with remarkable composure." "Thank you for calling me," I said. "You didn't have to. Some hotels would have just ignored it." "We take fraud seriously," he replied. "And frankly, when I saw the pattern in the records, I thought about my own marriage. If someone was doing that to my wife, I'd want to know." At the elevator, I saw hotel security waiting discreetly, two professional-looking individuals ready to escort Emma from the building. I felt a strange detachment watching the machinery of consequence begin to turn. Thomas and I rode down in silence. In the lobby, Patricia Hewitt met us one final time. "Mr. Thompson, on behalf of the Grand Meridian, please accept our apologies that this situation occurred at our establishment. Your credit card has been fully refunded for all charges. If you need any additional documentation for legal proceedings, please don't hesitate to contact us." I thanked her and we walked out into the cool Chicago evening. The city lights glittered around us, indifferent to personal dramas, to marriages ending, to lives fragmenting. "How are you holding up?" Thomas asked as we reached the car. "I don't know," I admitted. "I thought I'd feel angry, or sad, or something. But mostly I just feel tired." "That's probably shock," he said. "It'll hit you later. All of it." He was right. It did hit me, on the drive home, in the empty house, over the following days and weeks. But it never made me regret walking away. Some betrayals are too fundamental to forgive, too complete to repair. 3 weeks later, the annulment was finalized. Emma didn't contest it. She moved to another city for a job opportunity, and I heard through mutual acquaintances that she told people we'd grown apart and separated amicably. I never corrected the story. The truth belonged to me, documented in security footage and legal files, but I didn't need to share it. I changed the locks, repainted the bedroom, and slowly rebuilt a life that was genuinely mine. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was honest. And after everything, honesty felt like the only thing worth building on. Sometimes, late at night, I still thought about that hotel hallway, the shock on her face when I'd appeared at Castellano's door. But I never regretted it. The only thing I regretted was not seeing the signs sooner, not trusting my instincts when they'd whispered that something was wrong. I'd loved someone who didn't exist, or rather, who existed only partially, showing me one face while living an entirely different life. The real Emma had been a stranger, and in the end, that's exactly what she remained.